So remember, Billy, let's talk about the first truth of peace. To enter into peace, to achieve peace. The unavoidable historical process is sacrifice. Sacrifice is a sacred step that cannot be overlooked in achieving peace. Do you remember how God achieved peace with humanity? Yeah, he offered his son to eliminate enmity. Peace was achieved from then on. Then this peace plan, which is based on sacrifice, is not only a taboo for salvation, it is also the only way to Jerusalem, the so-called city of peace. Whether it is the United States or Ukraine, someone must make sacrifices if peace is to be achieved. In fact, the reason why human beings have been able to enter the so-called modern times and even have the so-called United States today is that without the so-called glorious revolution, no matter how glorious it is, there will be bloodshed and sacrifice. There wouldn't be those so-called modern times. The so-called revolution wouldn't exist without the American Revolutionary War, which is why we have the Western world and America today. This is really common sense. So to achieve peace, someone must make a sacrifice. I'm saying this not out of generosity. I'm just stating a basic fact. But Trump's peace plan, he has put in a lot of effort, and we might as well believe that he has good intentions. It means that we don't want any more people to die. Not only does he not want more people to die, he also has a more real demand, which is that the interests of the American people should never be sacrificed again. This is all true. Not only does he not want to sacrifice the interests of the American people anymore, he also wants to make a profit. It's like, for example, with mineral agreements, how can I leverage this peace negotiation to boost American interests? Even more, America first. But you see, all these strategies and schemes for planning deals, even the good intentions of humanitarianism, actually follow the sacrifices that Billy is referring to are completely at odds with that. This means that this peace strategy is unlikely to succeed. God won't allow it. I won't accept it. There's no such thing as cheap peace. Why? Because this war has already caused too many deaths and injuries. Not only that, but Ukraine has paid a huge price in terms of land. Completely rejecting any kind of sacrifice, this high-mindedness, this moral superiority. In the eyes of God, it may not be honest, and it may not be acceptable. Recently, some people have been discussing this with us. And of course, it's been circulating online, a perspective from a church that supports Trump. That is, the way to move towards peace in this crisis is Ukraine should surrender. Just like the prophet Jeremiah advised the Jews to surrender, like Nebuchadnezzar, Nisha, or the Babylonian Empire. This has been a particularly influential perspective in the church recently. Is the Bible used this way? I actually wrote a tweet with eight reasons why this app is a piece of false prophet bullshit. I'm not going to elaborate on that. I would like to add one more thing today, one truth or one fact. That is, this analogy is completely invalid. Why? Because Zelensky is not a Christian at all. You used Jeremiah's persuasion of the Jews to surrender to persuade Zelensky to surrender. You are completely irrelevant. In fact, on the contrary, if you want to persuade surrender, you might as well persuade Russia, because he is still considered Putin and a Christian. Whether it is true or not, it admits that it is Orthodox, and the Russian Orthodox Church believes it. Putin is the greatest Christian. Did you know that? Zelensky is not a Christian. He is not a Christian at all. Not even Jewish, although he is basically Jewish. Why basically? His father is definitely Jewish, and his mother seems not to be completely pure Jewish. But even so, you can't really call Zelensky a complete secularist. He can't even be considered a full-fledged Jew. So last week, he even attended the Muslim Ramadan celebration. At the same time, he also participates in activities across all denominations. He's not a religious fanatic, not at all. And according to your agenda of urging Ukraine to surrender. In fact, many things in history just don't align or make logical sense at all. So why isn't Israel surrendering to Hamas right now? What about surrendering to Iran or to Hezbollah? The Japan of those days. The capture of Pearl Harbor, the Battle of Pearl Harbor. Why didn't the US surrender? Hitler occupied France. Why didn't France surrender? Why didn't Britain surrender when he bombarded Britain? Why didn't the Chiang Kai-shek government of China surrender when Japan invaded China? Is this how you use the Bible? Where is your conscience? There was not even a grain of rice saying, you can't open it, you can't defeat Japanese imperialism. Illamy advised Israel to surrender. You should surrender quickly. Surrender will bring peace. That's just ridiculous. Actually, it's not just that. In Ukraine, there's an even more serious fact regarding the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. What stance? Actually, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is all supportive of Putin. How do you get Zelensky to become an Orthodox Christian and follow the so-called advice of Jeremiah? Zelensky now dares not publicly blame Christianity, that is the Orthodox Church, because he was afraid of a split in the middle. He used a grain of rice to persuade Ukraine to surrender anyway. Putin is completely off topic. But there are quite a few of these false prophets. Actually, back then, the reason God raised up the Babylonian Empire was, and Ukraine and Israel must surrender. He also has a basic war pattern. What pattern? At that time, the Babylonian Empire was the most powerful. You really have no choice. But today, it's completely different. Today, the Russian Empire is not the most powerful. It is a declining empire. In this world, there is still the United States and the European Union. Ukraine is unwilling to surrender now because it still has something to rely on. At least it can rely on Europe. Thinks it is at least part of Europe. You haven't even fought yet, and you're already talking about surrendering? Everyone knows that the EU has been wishy-washy in its support for Ukraine. If they were really backing Ukraine, it wouldn't be facing defeat. So, these half-hearted Christians are really doing more harm than good. That's not how things work. Billy told us, you must sacrifice. Of course, you can speak in a very high tone. It would be great to no longer die. I admit that this is a very beautiful wish. But you can't express your high profile with a hint of this Ukrainian. If Ukraine says we are willing to sacrifice to defend our country, then any of you Trump or Trump supporters, you can't act like you care more about their lives than the Ukrainians, right? Ukraine says, I'm willing to die. You can look at the recent polls. Zelensky's approval ratings are rising day by day. What does that indicate? It shows that Ukrainians who also value life would rather sacrifice their lives to defend their Jerusalem. Isn't that common sense? You can't just stand on the sidelines and say, oh, you can't guess who will die. What do you care? Of course, you can say it that way. Then you do you, I won't support it anymore, and that's fine.